comment. Do we have any public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to 3, approval of the September 1st, 2021 Public Safety Committee meeting minutes.
Vermont moves.
Motion by Lamont. Do we have a second? Don't all jump at once.
Second by Schley.
Second by Schley. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Policy issues discussion and potential committee determination, none. 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution, we have none. 6, education presentation, outcome monitoring reports. A, Wisconsin Circuit Court Access Program data subscription.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, perfect timing. So I'll give a little bit of background, and then the people with all the information are here to talk to you today. So high level, I think everyone probably has some, or the vast majority of you probably have some background onto what the Wisconsin Circuit Court Access Program is, and the way you're familiar with it is the website where anyone in the state of Wisconsin can access that website and find records that relate to circuit court matters that have been filed, as long as they're not confidential cases, appellate court cases, including Supreme Court cases. And there's a wealth of information within that system. Even on the public side, there's a great deal of information that individuals can access. It's highly manual on the public side. You can look at, search for John Smith, case in Marathon County, see all the cases that pertain to John Smith, click on each case, figure out if it's a criminal case. You can check when the individual made their initial appearance, what their bond was set at, what their next court hearing is, essentially find out where the court case is in the court system. But there's a flip side to that program that many of us don't have access, the vast majority of us don't have access to, and that's the non-public side. And as you know, Marathon County has been discussing the importance of really having greater access to data within the criminal justice system so that we can better inform our decision making. And what we learned through our partnership with the university program that we entered into last year, and through the work of a couple of members in our DA's office, that there is the opportunity to access that more private or back end of that system to pull data, but we needed to have a subscription to do that. So the reason this item is on your agenda today, Mr. Chair, and thank you for allowing us to put that on there, is to allow 2 members of the DA's office, and I believe Lori Yari may be logged on as well, or she may be joining us shortly, but essentially to give you an update on the projects that the District Attorney's Office, as well as our Justice Systems, Justice Alternatives Coordinator is pursuing, and why gaining access to this non-public side of the CCAP database was important, where they are in those projects, and how, again, that data is going to be useful. So that's the high-level overview, and we have both Ruth Heinz and Davis Rundy here from the District Attorney's Office. You guys want to come up and kind of explain again for the committee the projects that you're each undertaking, what the aim of those projects, specifically what those aims are, and then where you're at in the process and why the CCAP subscription is important. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Davis Rundy. I'm an assistant DA. I am, as Administrator Leonard pointed out, working on one facet of the project, the university project, and that is to determine racial and possibly socioeconomic disparities within the Marathon County justice system. And how this all got started is there's an institute called the Measures for Justice Institute that did an analysis on multiple states, Wisconsin being one of them, and then broke it down into counties. And in Marathon County, the Measures for Justice study, which was done, I believe 5 years ago, found that Marathon County was had certain disparities in their outcomes and just in charging for defendants of color and white defendants. And we were sending defendants of color, specifically black defendants, to prison at a rate of 2 to 1 to white defendants. There were also disparities in the offering of diversion to white defendants compared to black defendants. And what Measures for Justice used for that data was this CCAP data. That was the goal of the university project, to analyze that data and determine the accuracy of their analysis. They provide their data through their website, but it is quite convoluted. And we also didn't know what they exactly took into account. Some things that we take into account when we're charging and we are making offers or arguing sentence that is not necessarily represented in anything on CCAP is past criminal histories. And as you may have found out in other presentations done to this committee, the amount of defendants we have who have out-of-state criminal histories, and Ruth can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe is 1/3. And so, you know, when someone makes their appearance in court and we're setting bond, nothing gets put into the minutes or nothing gets put into the judgment of conviction that says this person has an out-of-state criminal history. So we were concerned that, we were very concerned at the disparities found in the Marathon County, or the Measures for Justice study. We obviously do not want that to be occurring. We want to have a fair and equal justice system in Marathon County. And so the project we went out to do is to determine the accuracy of the Measures for Justice study and confirm that. And if confirmed, how do we go about fixing that? The first thing we needed to do, obviously, was collect data. And we thought of multiple ways to do that, but the most apparent measure was to use our state system, which is called Protect. And Protect is used by all, well, not all, but it's offered to all district attorneys' offices throughout the state. And in that, we have just countless forms of data points. And we can run reports on Protect, but how that is presented to us is extremely messy. So for example, I had to run general reports of all cases closed in the last 5 years, and that generated easily over 100,000 lines of Excel spreadsheets. And we have 2 students. My project has 2 students from the University of Wisconsin Law School working on it. And they can, you know, parse that down through pivot tables and things like that. But it takes countless hours of individually going through those cases to find data points that Protect does not readily provide to somebody looking for it. Primarily things such as sentences. So in Protect, there is a column for sentence, then there's a column for conditions and length of sentence. And you might think, well, that sounds perfect, but it's not, because a sentence if someone's placed on probation in Protect, that's counted as their sentence, but that's not actually a sentence. So the students are having to go through and determine, okay, this is a sentence, but were they placed on probation? Were they sentenced to prison? Were they given jail? Were they given a fine? And it's just creating a lot of work that should not have to be done on an individual case-by-case basis, which is really just making the project completely unreachable and unmanageable. And so this CCAP data and so Protect also doesn't account for things like cash bonds, which is one thing we want to analyze, and whether white defendants are getting cash bonds in a lower amount or they're getting signature bonds, whereas black defendants might be getting cash bonds in a higher amount. Protect does not account for that. We don't have anything in Protect that says this person got a cash bond except for our personal case notes, and that's not generated in any of these reports. CCAP does account for cash bonds, and so on that, we really need the data to be able to fulfill our project goals. And also in terms of being able to go back and confirm measures for justice and what they are presenting, this CCAP data is vital to how we analyze this data and how we come to our conclusions. So for that reason, my side of the project sought out this data.
Hello, my name is Ruth Heinz. I'm the diversion coordinator in the district attorney's office. So the project lead that I am part of for the university project, which I think we kind of went over what the university project was a couple times throughout the last 6 months or so, but is on case processing. So what we do is trying to figure out where the delays are through the case processing for criminal cases, and seeing if there's ways that we can improve efficiency for case processing, like where are the hard points and what do we need to work on. So like Davis was saying, Protect is a place where we can pull a lot of data without a lot of issue. Like, it's easy to access, but it's not clean. And the main areas that are not available on Protect that I need to get through CCAP would be when forms are filed. So a lot of times cases are delayed due to the timeliness of filing reports and when it's filed throughout the process and how many times a certain form was filed. So for example, a withdrawal of attorney form, like how many times have defendants had that happen for them, and measuring that and the distance between when those are filed along with notice of retainer. So notice of retainer is a defense attorney saying that they're retained by the defendant. A waiver of attorney form, so to see if someone doesn't want to be represented by a defense attorney but wants to be pro se, they would file that form to see, so we would see when that's filed throughout the court process. And then, like Davis was saying, another thing that's really important with case processing is finding out what the sentence ended up being at the end of the whole process, and seeing if the length of how long a case is open affects the disposition of the case. So for this program to be successful, those were the main points that we needed to get from CCAP. I don't know if there's anything else you want me to add.
Sure. I can't recall the exact amount, but what did our subscription end up costing? Like $7,000?
Yeah, I think it was like 6,900 or something like that.
So Ruth and Davis both gave you a pretty high-level view of kind of the importance, or maybe not high-level, medium view of how important data can be for the two projects they're working on. there's a lot of other projects going on in the criminal justice system, and we've been talking about projects through our through our evidence-based decision-making group, and one of the things we constantly come back to is the importance of data. And just to illustrate that another way, through our system budgeting conversations that Chair Boots and Vice Chair Jacobson from this committee had participated in, that took place over a series of months earlier this year, one of the positions that wasn't formally requested through the budget process, but we went through a brainstorming exercise and talked about what are our future needs, what are the needs that we really need to look at and find strategies to fund. And it didn't live within a department in our brainstorming session, but it came up multiple times as the idea of a data analyst. And I've had similar conversations with the Wausau Police Department about their interest in better using data. So when the DA's office approached me about finding a source of funding for this, it's essentially a subscription, a one-year subscription for the $6,900. The importance for their programs, also the importance for the programs through the university study that Laura Yari is doing relative to evaluations of some of our justice alternative programs. This really made complete sense. So really, we're just bringing it to you today just for informational purposes, telling you we took that step in that direction. We obtained this access to this data set, and both Davis and Ruth are going to continue to use it, and through their partnership with the UW system. And you will receive reports ultimately from, I'm sure, whether it's Davis and Ruth directly or whether it's from someone from the UW about the results of those studies in the future. I will work with the chair to make sure those are on your agendas. That's going to be some time in the future, but just to again foreshadow that we're going to be talking more about data, and I don't want you to be surprised if next year in the either in the formal budget process or outside of it during calendar year 2022 that you'll have a request coming forward for the creation of a formal data analyst position that either devotes all of its time or a portion of its time to the criminal justice system. Because, and I think you see this in all aspects of life, the more data you have to inform your decision making, you just make better decisions. And there's one thing that all members of the criminal justice system, one of many that they share in common, but that is they want to make the best decisions they can. And like Davis referenced, first and foremost, we need to understand if something exists, and if there's a problem, we want to know about it, and we want to take the requisite steps to understand it and address it appropriately. So really just an informational update. It's certainly, if anybody on the committee, Mr. Chair, has any questions, happy to answer them at this time.
So I assume that we have two groups going actually, or are they together in this group that's doing this? Are you guys working together doing this, or are you on your own separate task force on this actually?
Ruth and I communicate quite regularly about our projects, but they are separate projects.
Okay. And then the second question I had was, most of these things are through the judges, I would assume, as far as sentencing. When you were talking about the 3-to-1, that's a sentencing thing through the judges, which is through the state, correct?
So, yes, but it is true the judges have the ultimate decision-making power. I would say, though, I don't actually have the data to support this assertion, but I would venture to guess that 95% of our resolutions in Marathon County are jointly recommended agreements that our judges 99% of the time adopt. So we, as an office, are working with defense counsel. We are negotiating plea agreements, and those agreements are adopted. We make statements to the court that we believe these are appropriate agreements, but this is also all in the context of addressing any unconscious bias anybody in the system has.
Is it okay if I speak?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
So I think what you were kind of trying to address is that the prosecutor system is a state system. Wouldn't the judges be part of that? So the protect system is for prosecutor, DA's offices only. The judges actually use the CCAP system. So that's all their data would be in the CCAP system that we would pull from. So that's why it's more detailed that way, because the judge's data is in that system, so it's more detailed in that system. When our system in the DA's office communicates with CCAP, we don't get the communication between the two isn't that clean, so we don't get the type of information that is useful.
Okay.
And to explain that further, for instance, if you have somebody who's charged with, let's just say, 10 counts in one case, when we run that report out of Protect, we don't get one line of Excel, quote-unquote, code or data. We get 10 lines. So when I mentioned there's over 100,000 lines, you know, that doesn't mean there's 100,000 cases. It just means things are being repopulated over and over and over again throughout the way Protect generates these reports. And it's just creating a mess to look at because you don't really know exactly what you're looking at because things might be listed as dismissed or dismissed and read in on certain counts, but then on one count it's a conviction, but it's all within the same case, so it's not really clear how it should be counted.
If I may, Mr. Chair, add one other point. I referenced other projects going on in the criminal justice system. So our university partnership, and you'll see this in my budget narrative and by the end of the week, had 34 project applications that we sought to be paired with classes, students, and professors throughout the university system. 8 of those projects, you heard about 2 of them today, 8 of those projects were within the criminal justice system. And certainly, as Davis referenced, the judges are certainly a big part of that, law enforcement, big part of that. One of Ruth's other projects related to law enforcement and some of the decision-making they're making on the street with respect to arrest. So there's a lot of stakeholders at play. One of the other really good things that the approaches that we're taking, I think, is a positive. We're making reports to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, which you'll hear about in a little bit. And that's going to be a great opportunity when we do get these reports. We get the feedback from the UW system staff. We can sit down and work on it together because it is a justice system issue. Like Davis said, there are cases, the vast majority, having been a prosecutor, vast majority are. You know, you work out the deal, you walk in, the judge accepts it, and you move on. But we all approach all of those conversations and those interactions with, like Davis said, from our own lens of personal experience. And if there's something that we're bringing to the table that's perhaps not helping us make the decisions that are in the long-term best interest of the community in terms of public safety, it behooves us to know about that and determine how to address it, because the judge is approving those agreements too. And I think there's a lot of opportunities, but again, at the core, the thing we wanted to make you aware of today is I authorized that expenditure out of the administration budget. I'm gonna make sure to put that in future budgets so we continue to have access to this. Hopefully the state changes its system and they just give us access. I know that was my initial response. I said, you guys are state employees in the DA's office, you should have access to it, but CCAP disagreed with my rationale, and at the end of the day, they make the decision, so we wrote the check. So if there are any other questions, we certainly can answer those at this time.
And I agree with what you said, Administrator Leonard, as far as we need statistics to make sure we're doing the right things. But I guess what, like the Assistant DA said, if you're not getting the right statistics, it's kind of like the saying, it's facts, how does that go? Facts are stubborn and statistics are pliable. And that's kind of a lot of things when we do statistics. You can kind of sway them the way you want them to go, and I want to make sure that we're having the right statistics brought in front of us when we're reading these things.
Completely agree with you. One of the project titles that we're working with the UW, the university program on is measuring what matters. Are we measuring what matters? And then to your later point, are we measuring it the right way? because like Davis referenced, if you have 10 lines of code and your data is distorted, you're not going to get a good outcome. So I think all that is, all those are valid points. And if I'm being very frank with you, we're learning. You know, we are not going to get this right on the first time. I can 100% guarantee that. That's the statistic you can bank on. This will not be 100% accurate the first time we do it.
Anybody else on the committee have any questions for the DAs?
I do have a couple, Chair.
Go ahead.
So my first question is, for either of our guests, do we know where Measures for Justice gets their data? Is it the same place as CCAP, or is it something else?
Measures for Justice, so when I contacted CCAP the first time about getting their data, I informed them why I was contacting them, what the project was about, and interestingly, their response was, yeah, you have to apply for it. FYI, Measures for Justice use this data, and you should be very skeptical of how they've analyzed this data. They didn't expound on that in any way. But so my understanding is Measures for Justice used, I don't know if they used entirely CCAP data, but they absolutely used CCAP data to run their project.
Is there a way that we could get a copy of that Measures for Justice report sent to the committee?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. And that's all the questions I have, so thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll move on to 6B, Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. So I was not able to make it, even though I am the designee. Go ahead.
If it's okay, Mr. Chair, can we take, Phil is here. He's the next item on your agenda. I will be providing information relative to the coordinating council, and since I'm going to be here for a while, in the interest of staff efficiency, if we could allow
Absolutely.
Phil. Thank you.
All right, so we'll go to 6C, recent discussions in the community regarding emergency medical services change, university year challenges, our university year project and the next steps.
All right, thank you, Chair. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Phil Rentmeester. I'm the Emergency Management Director. For reference, when I'm talking about emergency medical services, we're currently looking at over 40 calls for EMS service in Marathon County per day. And we have about an average of 7 minutes to respond to the call for the agencies that are across the county. I'm currently working with Masters of Public Health students and Masters of Engineering students. The public health students in the university program are working with me on two different topics within EMS-related areas primarily. One is recruitment and retention, one is EMS strategic planning, and then the other team, the engineering team, is working with me on structural, or rather technical rescue response. All these are related to the Marathon County strategic plan. For example, Objective 7.1, Strategy A is consider the potential to consolidate emergency service agencies. And Objective 12.3 is Strategy C, work with local municipalities and other government agencies to explore opportunities to share costs and/or consolidate public services. And finally, Objective 10.6 is to ensure the future availability of a skilled and flexible workforce prepared to meet the needs of both existing and emerging industries and technologies. The groups that I'm working with in EMS, we've met a few times. We're looking at an end date of December 7th for the presentations to be given on what they find out. Right now, their goal specifically, at least the strategic planning group, the recruitment and retention group is working more on volunteerism and how we can get healthcare workers into the field, specifically for EMS. By the way, in the healthcare sector in general, just for information, that the staffing right now in that field is at a critical level. And they're challenged every day for the pediatric and adult staff. That's being assessed every day. But in the EMS world, it's not a whole lot different as far as staffing. It's a challenge to get people in there as well and keep them. But in the consolidation or the possible sharing of EMS across the county, their goal is to develop a report that assesses the current emergency medical service delivery system within Marathon County and provide evidence-based recommendations and frameworks for a strategic plan that considers different models to include a model that may be urban and rural in nature, provides the benefits to municipalities for adopting a new model that may increase efficiency, improve response times and service delivery, reduce or avoid costs through sharing of services, possibly items such as ambulances, motor pools, other costs that go along with administration as well. Improve purchasing, consolidation, and distributing supplies, and enhancing training opportunities, assessing the location of the fire stations or the ambulance stations where they're at and whether they can be used in some type of future agreement. The feasibility of delivering services from a paramedic level all the way to the emergency medical responder level. Any cooperative response agreements that are currently in place amongst the municipalities. The model operations and options that could be used for volunteers, hybrid of volunteers and career staff or part-time staff. Any costs associated with the delivery systems, and what they would be for each municipality. Any future funding sources, whether we can expand out on billing or charges or levies. And finally, just an evaluation tool to find out what a successful service delivery model looks like, what would be best provided for in Marathon County. Again, I've been working with those folks, and we're looking at a presentation. If you're interested, it's on December 7th. It's from 11 o'clock to 12:30. They'll be delivering that virtually. I encourage everyone to follow up and watch their presentations. I think it'll be excellent. Last week on September 27th, I met with some leaders, local leaders in the town of Marathon to discuss EMS and the situation that's occurring right now in the county. They talked about a lot of things that I talked about already as far as sharing of services and whatnot. They talked about different models that are provided in different counties, whether it was Oneida County, Portage County, and they also talked about a presentation by a EMS service EMS service delivery person from Waushara County, and how that went, and potential of inviting that person up to a future meeting with this group to discuss how that might work in Marathon County. It's my thoughts that they wanted to get together and talk about this some more. The meeting did go down into just a general discussion on different topics in EMS service, and they were interested in watching the presentation as well. So, Chair, that's all I have.
Thanks, Phil. This is Administrator Leonard. Again, just a little bit of context to this, and I'm going to start with, I hope I'm not going to burst everyone's bubble, but if you think Marathon County is exceedingly special in this regard, you're wrong. Every county in the state of Wisconsin, quite as I understand it, this is an issue not only within the state but beyond it. That, our emergency medical response system has for a great many years, particularly in the rural area, been built on the use of volunteer staffing. And as Phil alluded to, for a wide variety of reasons, that model is exceedingly taxed at this point. It is, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say it's at its breaking point. So this is one of the reasons, as I, having been part of the strategic planning process in 2018, that the board asked for us to look at what are some strategies, potential strategies for consolidation of these services, like Phil said. And as our emergency manager director, Phil's going to be tasked with bringing those reports forward, like he said, in December, working with the university program. And they're making headway, but conversations are also happening, like Phil said, the conversation with local leaders. I was contacted, Phil attended that meeting. They're having those same conversations, but they know this is a real issue, and again, it's not just an issue here. So The final point that I'll add is that for those of you that were able to attend the Wisconsin Counties Association conference last week, as Phil referenced, there was a presentation, that presentation was at the Wisconsin Counties Association, a presentation on consolidation strategies relative to emergency medical services, and it was from a gentleman from Waushara County. There are counties that have utilized consolidated systems. They don't all look and feel the same, but they are under that umbrella term consolidated. And the gentleman from Waushara County gave a very interesting presentation. And as I understand it, that individual is we're going to work to bring that individual here to Marathon County to meet with some local leaders. And it will, I think, inform some of that work that Phil's talking about with the university program. And the last piece that I'll talk about, because I would imagine as county board members, certainly are always interested in quality of service and how we can deliver the best quality of service, but you're also equally interested in the flip side of that coin, which is how much stuff costs and how you're going to pay for it. There is a specific provision within Wisconsin statute, specifically section 66.0602, I believe it's sub 3, sub E6, but whatever, with whatever this specific subsection is, it allows for a county to levy a tax for consolidated emergency medical service that is outside of your operating limit. There are very few exceptions to Wisconsin's levy limit laws. This is one of them. So should Marathon County wish to continue these conversations and ultimately make the determination to move in a consolidated direction, whatever that actually may look like Phil said, there's not one model. There is a rural-urban consideration here that we'd certainly need to look at. But there is that potential funding source there. And I attended the presentation at Wisconsin Counties Association, very interesting. My recollection was that the Waushara County model had a general tax levy expenditure, I believe, of $3.4 million was the total cost to run that operation annually. But again, you're able to levy a tax to cover a portion of those fees, because the other part is you can seek reimbursement in certain circumstances. However, as is often the case, the reimbursement you seek isn't the reimbursement that you will receive, particularly if there's reimbursement through Medicaid and Medicare. So that's, again, just an informational presentation to keep this in front of you. Conversations have been happening since 2018, but I would say they're reinvigorated as of late, and Phil attended the most recent one. So with that, certainly if anyone has any questions, happy to take them at this point.
I'd like to make a request that you put out on our county emails, the supervisors all get a invitation to that meeting in December.
I think if it's the university, and talking with Phil, we'll make sure that any presentation of the university final report for any of the projects goes to the appropriate standing committee. So whether or not you attend the presentation on December 7th, I'm a little hesitant to send out an email invitation, because we'll just need to make sure we provide adequate notice, and I don't know if it would be a quorum of simply this body or other bodies. I would imagine numerous other committees would be interested, so perhaps that's a presentation actually we can have in front of the full county board. But Mr. Chair, you and I can sit down and talk about how to do that. But I certainly appreciate the fact that this is an issue of wide concern, and we'll make sure that, like all the projects, I mean, we are getting a lot of value from our partnership with the UW system, and I think we want to make sure that we report out on all the projects and the results that they yield.
Any further questions from the committee? If not, thank you very much. All right, we'll go back to 6B, Criminal Justice Coordinating Council Report of Discussion of First Meeting. I'd like to apologize, I couldn't make it to the first meeting. Craig McEwen went in my stead, so I know there were big shoes to fill, Craig, but I'm sure you did a great job. Go ahead, Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if at any point, Vice Chair McEwen, you want to jump in, please feel free to do so. So we did have the first meeting of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and you'll recall that that was an amendment to your county code of ordinances the discussion started at this committee. And the purpose, again, of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council is to formalize an informal structure that we've had in Marathon County for multiple decades, but essentially it brings together all the criminal justice stakeholders, judges, prosecutors, representatives of defense counsel, representatives from law enforcement, representatives from the jail, social services, and other entities, along with representatives of this county board, including the chair of this committee, the chair of Health and Human Services, and the county board chair. And it allows for discussions of items that impact the criminal justice system and likewise impact the county board and county budgets. So that first meeting was held on September 16th. And as is often the case at a first meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about things that are extremely riveting to lawyers like myself, like bylaws and the election of officers, or the designation of officers. But then also we had a couple of educational presentations. So I just want to give you a real quick overview of what transpired at the meeting. And we'll make sure we get the minutes once they're approved by the coordinating council. We'll include those in future public safety packets. But again, we approved bylaws, and Judge Suzanne O'Neill was designated as the chairperson of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. County Board Chair Kurt Gibbs is the vice chair of that entity. That was the first order of business after the approval of the bylaws. Then we had educational presentations. You heard actually two of the presentations that were made today referenced some of the information that was discussed, namely the partnership within the criminal justice system with the University Year Program. So we again heard from Ruth and the District Attorney's Office on a couple of their projects, and then Lori Yari provided updates relative to each of the projects that she is leading as the Justice Alternatives Coordinator. So in addition to addressing potential racial and socioeconomic disparities and addressing criminal case delays in the justice system, we heard about a project that Ruth is working on relative to improving the arrest determination decision that's being made by law enforcement throughout the county, and an approach being piloted by both the county and the Wausau Police Department. We also heard about a project aimed at conducting an evaluation of the drug treatment court and the OWI court. A project about clarifying the goals of the public safety assessment tool, and you may recall we've referred to this as our pretrial case management and supervision program we're implementing here in Marathon County, one of a handful of counties across the state that are participating in this pilot project. But it's essentially what it does is it's a validated assessment tool that has been used in other jurisdictions to assist. It's another piece of information to assist the judges in making their determination on whether an individual is released on bond at their initial appearance, like Davis referenced, held on cash, a high cash bond, or released on a signature bond. And the purpose of that project is, again, to gain better insight on our use of that tool and understand if that tool is valid on our local population. Right now, we're still in the process of, I'll call it our infancy of utilization of that tool in our case management that follows. But again, essentially, it's another tool to inform decision-making. Based on that decision-making, the judge is still vested with exercising professional discretion. The prosecutor is going to make arguments. Defense counsel makes arguments. All parties would have access to do have access to the information from this assessment, and ultimately the judge makes a determination relative to bond, and they can also indicate what conditions an individual might need, or that the court's going to order while their case is progressing through the justice system. And that's one of the aspects of this tool that is important, is that it allows for the parties within the criminal justice system to essentially work collaboratively to put together a matrix that is what I'll call a supervision matrix. So if I go through the criminal justice system, I make an initial appearance, and as part of that, when they conduct this assessment, they see that Lance is a high risk of failing to appear in court, and also a high risk of committing a new crime if I am released. The judge may be leery to release me, but if he or she does, they are more likely, utilizing that tool and also the recommendations of the prosecutor and defense counsel, to put me on a higher level of supervision than perhaps someone who is lower risk of both of those things, lower risk to failure to appear and a lower risk of committing a new crime. Those individuals, if you're low risk on both those scales, you may be released upon a signature bond, and maybe the only thing you're going to get is a text reminder to attend your court appearance the day before court, similar to we all get the text reminders we all get relative to the dentist. And then there's everything in between. So that's the nature of that project. We had a project trying to help us better identify and understand how we can meet the needs for transitional sober housing within Marathon County, and this really relates back to a discussion I recall that the Public Safety Committee and Health and Human Services Committee started, I think that was in 2019. At the time, the chair of this committee, Public Safety, was Vice Chair McEwen, and the chair of Health and Human Services was Chair Boots. And they had a joint meeting about a presentation that they had attended through the National Association of Counties about the importance of transitional sober housing and how that can improve the functioning of the justice system. So we're trying to learn more about what that might look like for us here in Marathon County. We also have a project attempting to assist us in how to evaluate our SSTOP program, which you've heard about before. And finally, I referenced this already, but a project across the criminal justice system aimed at helping us measure what matters, understand what are the key performance indicators within the justice system, and work together to develop a framework for communicating that to stakeholders. So quite a lot of projects through that university program, and that was discussed at the first meeting of the CJCC, along with an update on that pretrial case management and supervision program implementation that I referenced. So busy meeting. We have our next meeting, I believe it's at the end of this month, October 21st, I believe, but I'm sure Tasha can correct me. But it's later this month to have another meeting, and working with Judge O'Neill shortly to put that agenda together. So if anyone has any questions, concerns, happy to address those at this point relative to that educational item.
Anything for Administrator Leonard? And again, I'd like to thank Craig. We'll touch base later, but thank you for going in my stead. I had a family issue I had to deal with, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. Mr. Chair, can I just add one thing?
Absolutely.
Thank you. At that first CJCC meeting we had, I guess the most important thing that I got out of the meeting was to get all the parties involved in the criminal justice system in one room, so that we can work together, because it's more than just the DA's office or the judges or probation and parole or all those. And like I said, it was very well received that they know we have to work together. The entire criminal justice system will work well if we're communicating amongst each other, and one's not doing one thing and another department is doing something else. So, I think that was the most important thing I got out of that meeting when I attended. So thank you.
Thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, just to clarify the date, it is October 21st at 8 o'clock. It's a public meeting So there is a public notice and agenda that goes out for the meeting, and it will be held in the assembly room. So anyone, if you wish to attend, you certainly are free to do that. I would simply ask, if you are on this committee and you intend to attend, please reach out and let me know, so that if I do need to provide a notice for a public safety meeting that is really not a public safety meeting, I can do that as well.
Anything further from the body? All right, thank you. 7, next meeting, time, location, announcements, and agenda items. Committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussions. Any committee members want to see something on the agenda or want consideration for something on the agenda? Okay, if not, further down the road, you could email Lance or I or Tasha. Thank you. 7B, next meeting, Wednesday, November 3rd, 1:30. Anybody have issues with that time, date? If not, I will take 8.
Supervisor Mast, move to adjourn.
Motion by Supervisor Mast to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I guess everybody wants to stay.
Everyone wants to stay. This is so much fun, or what's going on? Schley with a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.